I will call this meeting to order, the Water Environment Services Advisory Committee meeting, July 13th at 6 p.m. Welcome, everyone. So nice to see you again on Hollywood Squares. I do believe we do need to find out, Chris, if we have a forum tonight, even though I don't believe we need approval on anything except for the minutes.
We truly just need one more person.
One more person? Oh,
Yes. All right. We're good.
we're good. Oh, we got two more, so we're really good. Oh, three more. Yay. Okay, we're set. All right. All right. I'm calling the meeting to order for those of you just arriving. Thank you for joining us. I'm going to turn it right over to Greg Geist.
Good evening, everyone, and thanks for being here. It's good to see everyone again. I just had a couple quick updates or things that have happened. Today, it was made official that we received a $620,000 grant from Metro for our Three Creeks project. So that's a $3 million on the construction side and a little over $4 million on total with design. But yeah, we and it was the largest award in the of the awards that were made by Metro. So $620,000 to go to Three Creeks, and we're very happy about that. The other thing, I went to a water reuse summit on June 22nd. Shelley has been kind of spearheading Wes's efforts on the water reuse side, and it was great. There was a lot of energy in the room, and it felt great. And to go along with that, there was we supported a reuse bill in the legislature this year. It was 3231, which was ultimately incorporated into the drought bill, which is HB 2010. Which did pass. And so what that directs, or what that does, is direct DEQ to revise their water reuse rules. And I've said this before, but we literally can't take the beautiful water that comes out of our MBR, put it in a tanker truck, and flush our own sewer pipes under the new rules. So I think that there is a desire, some momentum at DEQ to really promote and support reuse, but they have rules right now that are very onerous. So I think that's going to be a good thing for us and for the industry. And then the last thing was and I'll send out pictures, I'm sure, in my next update, but we had a really amazing and fun potluck yesterday, complete with dunk tank, and I think I went last. And so everyone's arms were warmed up, and I think I went down about a dozen times. So, but yeah, we had a great time. And that's my update.
Thank you, Greg. And I skipped over roll call tonight. Chris, can you go ahead and do that for us, please, before we move on?
Yes, no problem. I'll do. Councillor Khosrowshahi.
Here, sorry, just forgot to mute.
You got it. Anthony Fields.
I am here.
Perfect. Brian Johnson.
Here.
Christopher Bowker.
Here.
Diana Helm.
Here.
Greg DiLoretto.
Here.
Catherine Miller.
I see a cat.
She's here.
That's here. Okay. Mayor Milch.
Here.
Michael Morrow.
Here.
Renee Harbor.
Here.
Richard Craven.
Here.
Rita Baker.
Here.
Roseanne Johnson.
Present.
Wonderful. Like how you mixed it up a little. That's great. And we officially have 4.
Thank you, Chris. I appreciate that. We are going to move on to approval of the May minutes, and I will do that by consensus, which means a thumbs up if everyone's okay with that. All right, thank you. May minutes are approved. Public comment. Chris, do we have anyone on the line tonight? Oh, you're muted too.
No, I'm unmuted. Anybody, please feel free to raise your hand if you have any public comments at this time. I don't see any hands raised.
Okay. And then we're going to move right on. We have a big presentation from Jeff on the capital projects update. And I'm going to go ahead and let him get started so that we can stay on time tonight. So turning it over to Jeff.
Perfect. Thank you. I will share my screen here. Is that coming through for everybody?
Yes.
Excellent. As Diana mentioned, we're going to give, I'm going to run through an update on our capital projects and our capital improvement plan delivery that was adopted and approved last year. I want this to be an open dialogue, and so feel free to just speak up if you have a question. I don't see any raised hands, and so Chris, if you could help manage that a little bit if somebody raises a hand and call on them. So it's appreciate back and forth. It is a lot of information, and so I will move relatively quickly. I'm trying to cover all of the projects we have going on and give a very big overview of just how busy we are as a capital group. Before I dive into the bulk of the presentation, I just want to remind everybody why WES is such an important not only organization for the county, but just for the region. I don't think that we all get into the sewage business because it smells like roses or we enjoy being around it. We're all here to ensure that we have amazing outdoor world to explore and adventures to have. So I just want to acknowledge the efforts of the people on this committee and within the WES organization that continue to be dedicated to protecting our environment, protecting our water quality and advocating for public health. I love exploring the outdoors and something I'm passionate about. So thank you very much. Quick outline of what I'm going to be talking about. I'm going to give a background on the capital improvement plan development. So how do we really, what's the basis and how do we build our capital plan? I'll spend a bulk of the presentation talking about the updates and the projects that we're currently underway on. A little bit of one slide on next steps and what we can expect to see. I'm kind of setting the table for the next presentation around an updated capital improvement plan for 23 through 28. And then I'll have hopefully extra time for questions. So our CIP is developed with extensive planning efforts. And so over the last 6 years, WES has really embarked on a planning journey, and out of each of these plans come recommendations for improvements to either provide additional capacity or address condition deficiencies within our infrastructure. We take all of those projects or recommendations from these plans. We look at those and we try to prioritize them and schedule them based on what's the driver and how much the costs are, and try to build an implementation schedule that is the result is the capital plan. Many or most of the projects you'll see are interrelated. If we're making an improvement at the treatment plant, we have to make sure all the downstream capacity is there, which is why we're working on an outfall. But I just want to address that it's really thoughtful planning, which is critical to ensure that WES is making the right sized investments at the right time to address the needs. There's really two priorities, as I kind of mentioned here previously, but we have the capacity-driven priorities and the reliability priorities. And so the capacity would be for growth within our service area, and then the reliability is, making sure that our equipment is current, that the parts are available, and that we can continue to maintain it. And one of the things, just a note, we recently, the board adopted our 23-24 budget. Commissioner Savas had asked a question about how we're managing, how we're doing, not only on the large projects, but really asked a concern about the smaller projects, just to make sure that we're not going to get hit with unforeseen surprises around failing equipment. And I was really excited to be able to say that all of our planning documents had a reliability or a condition assessment piece to them that feeds into our asset management system. And so we are really addressing those, and you'll see that split on the next slide here. You can see about 60% of our capital expenditures really are about reliability. It's about making sure that we're replacing aging infrastructure before it fails. And there's a 40% is capacity. So it's about a 60-40 split between reliability and capacity. And that's not only true for the next 5 years, but if we look even further in our planning documents and project out a 12-year look ahead, we still see the same thing where we're really about 60% reliability and 40% capacity. Just a reminder on what the 5-year CIP looked like that was approved in 2022. So as you can see, we have a lot of money to spend over the next 5 years, and we're working really hard to do that. But in the end, we can have all the planning documents we want in the world, but if we're not actually implementing the plan, then we're not doing our job. And so I want to take just a second to really dive into how are we doing delivering the CIP. Looking back at the 22-23 CIP, we had planned for 25 projects to be underway or being worked on. We're currently at 24. We're working on 24 projects. We did decide to postpone one project that was determined once we started to dive into it that it really wasn't necessary at this time. The solids project really handled that, so we could delay that work a little bit. So that's projects. And then when we look at budget, we had budgeted $29.3 million, and we estimated to spend $17.8 million. So we're a little underspending. Some of that is due to equipment delays and things of that nature where construction just didn't quite go as fast as we had planned for. And overall, we have 51 active contracts. That's between design engineers and contractors that we're managing as a capital improvement group. So we're all very busy. So what really impacts our ability to deliver the CIP? And a lot of it is staffing. How do we have the capacity in place to really have the project delivery staff to do that? And so I've been with Wes for 6 years now. And in my 6 years, we've really only had a full capital engineer group for about a year of that time. We've had 3 retirements, we've promoted 3 within. And so there's been this changing constant state of change, but it's not all that people are leaving. Some are retiring and some are getting promoted, and we're bringing in new people. And so I just want to acknowledge that this is not unique to Wes. It's really an industry-wide, in the wastewater industry specifically, concern. But I want to acknowledge that staffing does have a direct impact on our ability to deliver. And I do want to take a moment to thank this group again for recommending in our 23-24 budget. 2 new engineering positions were included in that budget. And that's going to really help our capacity to deliver. We've already, in fact, filled one of those positions, and we'll be working on this fall to fill the last position. We currently have 8 total engineers, including myself in that number. And so we'll be at a group of 9 total once we hire the last vacant position we have.
Jeff, I'm going to interrupt for just a second because we had another person join. So I believe David Galaby is on. So can we count him in the roll call this evening?
Yes, will do.
Is that you, David? It says David's iPhone. I think it is. And I don't
Chair Helm, it is David. He connected with me and I sent him the link, so he's listening in.
Oh, perfect.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. Sorry,
You're
Jeff.
welcome.
Don't mean to derail you here at all.
Oh,
Sorry.
not at all. Again,
Carry on.
feel free to interrupt as you have questions. I am covering a lot of projects today. I don't want to focus just on one. I wanted to really give an idea of all the things we have going on. So feel free to interrupt. I will move quickly so we get through in 50 minutes. We did. So before I really go into the overview on all the project related slides, I do want to note a few changes we made from the plan that was previously adopted. During delivery of a plan, there's always opportunities found or hurdles to overcome that might shift our alignment or how quickly we could deliver a project, or you know, a roadblock around obtaining an easement or something that like might impact us. And so we have to be flexible with our delivery and adaptable to change. And so as we embarked into delivery over the last year, we did make a few changes in our delivery. So the Kellogg Creek admin improvement project, it switched places with the Tri-City admin project. Originally, we were going to kick off work on the Tri-City project. That plan included moving parking for field operations, large vehicles to a different location. While we look for that location and identify where that's going to be, we didn't want to delay not doing any kind of improvements. So we went ahead and we're kicking off the Kellogg Creek admin project. We did receive grant funding. We received a $2 million community grants to spend at our boring facility. We are working to kick off an evaluation to determine the best way to use that funding to make sure that boring is brought up to to make significant improvements at the boring facility. Happy Valley approved the Pleasant Valley North Carver Comprehensive Plan. So a portion of this area is served by the extension of the Rock Creek Interceptor. In an effort to allow adequate time for obtaining easements, we're going to get going on this project sooner. I don't expect this will be constructed sooner, but it will allow us more time to obtain the necessary easements and make sure that we bring it in on time, and evaluate potential of phasing the delivery of this project. So we're going to get going on that here this fall even. And then as you'll see later, we are implementing aeration basin improvements this summer at Kellogg. We're bringing those online. So to continue the momentum on this type of work and to make sure that we can get the similar equipment at Tri-City that we get at Kellogg, we're going to, instead of starting this project in 25-26, we're going to kick this project off this fall as well, so that we can make sure that the technology at both facilities is the same, which is really important for operations and maintenance staff to have familiarity. So with that, I'll dive into all the project work. I've distilled this down to 15 of the 24 projects we have. It is going to be a much higher level. It's not as much detail, so feel free to jump in and ask questions if something's not making sense, or if you have want some additional details. So the Tri-City Influent Pump Station, which is called an IPS, is an acronym, was original to the construction in 1985. It receives raw wastewater from the collection system, and these pumps lift the flow up to the treatment processes, where it then flows by gravity all the way through our treatment processes and out to the river through our outfall. The facility plan identified both a need for condition-based upgrades to the aging influent pump station, as well as an immediate and long-term need for expansion of the pumping capacity to accommodate growth. This station, you can imagine, needs to handle all the ranges of flows we receive during both wet and dry weather seasons. And so this range is delivered using two approaches. One is pump size and one is pump control. And so to control the pumps, we use a variable frequency drive. And so I like to think of a variable frequency drive, or VFD, as a gas pedal for the pumps. It allows the pumps to ramp up and down as speed to provide the necessary flow control. The pumps are original pumps constructed in the 1980s. The variable frequency drives are nearing 20 years of age, and the parts are becoming obsolete. This project will replace all 5 pumps, all the variable frequency drives, and make sure that these increase in capacity, the wet well hydraulics, are suitable to accommodate this increase in capacity. We are going to the board next week to gain approval on the design contract to get this design started. And I'll start at the Tri-City plant, and then I'll go to
Question,
the
I'm sorry, I don't know how to raise my hand.
Yep, no problem.
What is the normal life cycle for one of those pumps?
With proper maintenance, 20 to 30 years would be pretty normal. If you can continue to get parts for them. That's what really comes into the driving force behind becoming obsolete, is part availability. So we can maintain them, but eventually parts become obsolete. And we're running into that now, where it's just taking us longer to acquire parts to do our rebuilds and such. And so we're really struggling to stay on top of that because of the time it takes to get those parts.
And we're
'cause they're-
pretty close to the 30-year mark here. Yeah.
we're closer to 40 on these
Yeah.
pumps. They were put in service in the mid 80s. So yeah, we're close to 40 years. And
I'm
so
pleased to see you doing this. Thank you.
Yep.
All right. We got a couple more hands, Jeff. Christopher?
absolutely.
Yeah, I was curious, and showing the pictures of the pumps kind of triggered this in my mind. For this project, or maybe just more generally for any of your projects, do you ever reach out to the Energy Trust of Oregon? They'll give energy incentives, and pumps is one that you often will qualify for. And I was just curious, do you ever look at that generally? And have you looked at this for this project?
Absolutely. We look at that. We generally reach out to Energy Trust for all of our projects where we might see energy savings. And yes, we take advantage of Energy Trust funding. When we did, an example is when we replaced all the non-potable pump station, we got about $70,000 from them to replace those pumps and add variable frequency drives to that system because of the power energy savings we would see. And so yes, we absolutely make sure that's part of all of our projects, and we will for this one as well.
Great.
I think the new pumps will be more energy efficient, so there is a chance. A lot of times it's adding the variable frequency drives that can really drive your energy consumption down, and these already have that. But these new pumps, if there's a better efficiency, then we will take advantage and try to get funding where we can, for sure. I appreciate that suggestion.
And I will say, you could always, well, yeah, you're probably already doing this. I mean, sometimes you can compare it to like a baseline. Even if you're already going to be going with a VFD, if the norm is not to use that, perhaps, then in my experience, they've still allowed us to kind of compare it to that normal baseline, even if you're not necessarily intending to do it, just because it doesn't make sense for the way your organization works.
Right.
But thank you.
Mayor Milch?
I'm just curious, is there, if I get plumbing done at my house, we have to turn the water off. Do you have enough redundancy in that system to replace these pumps one at a time and keep things functioning on a normal basis?
Yes, the way that in our industry, the way we rate the sizing of pump stations, it always assumes it's called firm capacity. And so the firm capacity of the station always assumes the largest pump out of service. And so the systems are generally designed with assuming the largest pump is not going to be in service, and you need to make sure that you still have the capacity with the remaining pumps. And so there's a bit and when we rate them, there is a redundant pump built into there.
All right.
Any other questions?
I see no more hands right at the moment.
Perfect. Absolutely. Keep them coming though, if you have them. So we are doing a overhaul of our primary at the Tri-City facility. We're doing an overhaul on our primary clarifiers. We're rehabilitating the concrete inside the tank, and we're replacing the mechanicals. But before I talk about it, I want to take a moment to outline what exactly the purpose of a primary clarifier is. And so the primary clarifier, it's the final physical treatment process that removes solids before the biological treatment starts. So wastewater enters the clarifier tanks. The flow is really slowed down significantly, and floatable solids, which we call scum, are removed by surface skimming. And the settleable solids, which we would call sludge, are collected on the bottom of the tank. They're raked down to a low spot, a sump, so to speak, in this basin, and they are pumped. And scum and sludge is pumped over into our digesters. The effluent of this tank is dust, which is next step is biological treatment. It leaves the clarifier over a weir and heads towards the aeration basins. To paint the picture, you get about 90 to 95% of the settleable solids out in this process. It's a very effective process and is critical to making sure our plant runs well. All the original equipment has been in service since the mid 80s when the plant was brought online. As I mentioned before, this project consists of replacing all of the mechanical equipment, repairing the failing concrete surfaces. This project will be delivered over 3 summer seasons, and this is because we can take 2 out when we're working in the summer. We take 2 offline every summer just because the flows are lower, and so we'll get in and do 2 a year for the next 3 years. So we'll be wrapping this project up in 2025. And they're heavy at work right now out there, working on removing the failing concrete and resurfacing. So it's a exciting project that'll be really good to have that infrastructure replaced. The third big project we have going on at the Tri-City Outfall, and I've presented on this, so I won't spend a lot of time talking about it into the details, but the current outfall was constructed in 1984. It's nearing capacity in our peak wet weather events. We are negotiating with a contractor right now for price to build the outfall. The plan would be to start construction in 2024, early in 2024, and build out to the river, and then come back in the summer of 2025 and finish the last portion of the pipeline in the river in the 2025 in-water work period. This is a little misleading. We don't dive quite as deep quite as soon, but we do dive down under the river, and we are anticipating to recover our tunneling machine out in the river. So it'll be a wet recovery, which will avoid digging up the park and such. And so that, as I mentioned, we're working on finalizing permits and negotiations with contractors. And so that's not 100% set in stone, but that's the current trajectory of what we're working through. It's a 90 or a 7.5 foot diameter pipe. And we are working on a online virtual tour for those interested in the project. And we expect to have that available by fall. And we'll be updating that with pictures and videos as the project's built. It's a pretty exciting project and one of the bigger tunnels in our region. Now I'm going to jump over to the Kellogg Creek Treatment Facility, and we're going to talk about the influent pump station again. So the Kellogg Creek Influent Pump Station project, it's really the second phase of improvements at the pump station. The first phase was completed with the Kellogg Improvements Project, where the first 2 pumps were replaced. This project is coming back and replacing the 2 larger wet weather pumps and existing VFDs. And this project is really, it's not a capacity increase, because as you might be aware, Kellogg is at a capped capacity. But this is again a reliability type project where we're replacing the pumps and VFDs. And this style of pump you see here in this image is the style of pump that we will use not only at Kellogg, but also at Tri-City, which I failed to mention, but we'll be removing the big drive shafts at Tri-City, which are about 45-ish foot in height from the basement all the way up to ground level. So that'll be a big change there from a O&M standpoint as well.
Jeff, can I go backwards a screen? I have
Absolutely.
a question on the
Sure.
outfall. So the temporary launch shaft, so I'm not an engineer, so forgive me for asking this, but it's so that's 290 degrees, right? So is there a reason why it's that way versus a slope that goes down? And it doesn't, do you want to slow the water down? Is that the purpose?
So, and I'll need to get a new figure created to talk from. This is a bit exaggerated. We did look at this with a drop, and the driver here, when we talked, was just staying in the similar material. So there's 3 different layers of geology that we're coming through. And so in reality, this is about 20 feet deep here at the launch shaft, and we'll stay 20-ish feet. Main Street, we get shallow because it dips down on us, but after that we stay fairly shallow, and then at the end we will slope down. So it won't be as exaggerated as these 290s, although we did look at that as an option, but it was a more expensive, a less favorable option, and it adds air to the water as well. And this, you really have to figure out how to make sure that doesn't happen. So
I'm sure as you get closer, there will be a better picture.
There will be a much,
I need pictures.
Profiles now. Yep, absolutely. I can send you a picture of what we're talking about now, or a plan and profile sheet to show you
Okay, cool.
Influent pump station at Kellogg. Next project we have at Kellogg Creek is the aeration basin improvements. And so the aeration basins are where the biological treatment really is. They're the heartbeat of the liquid treatment process at the facility. And this is where air is supplied to the flow stream, which allows the bugs to grow and remove the organic pollutants present in the wastewater. The control of oxygen in these basins is critical. And for biological control, to make sure that we're growing the right bugs. So we want to, every microbe has different conditions it likes to grow in, and we want to make sure to control our oxygen to make sure we grow the right bugs. But also the blowers are the biggest energy users at the facility, which is a direct cost to us. And so better dissolved oxygen or oxygen in the water control will reduce energy costs. And this is another one that we've worked with Energy Trust on, that we can get some money. We intend to get some money on this project. So the main aeration blowers were replaced as part of the Kellogg Creek Improvements Project in 2017. However, much of the instrumentation and control systems that we currently use are nearing the end of their useful life. So we're going to go ahead and upgrade those as part of this project and bring it up to current standards. And similar to the primary clarifier project at the Tri-City facility, we're also addressing any issues with the concrete in the submerged portion of these basins. At the completion of the project, we'll have enhanced control, which will help manage this part of our treatment train, taking advantage of the new blowers that were installed as part of the Kellogg Creek Improvement Project. So it's the second step in the improvements to the aeration basins at Kellogg. The Kellogg Creek Secondary Clarifier Rehab Project is the next project at Kellogg Creek. The secondary clarification follows the biological treatment process with the main goal of returning sludge back to the aeration basins. And so we bring the flow into the clarifier, we slow the flow down, all those bugs that we've been feeding organic material to, they settle down, and then we collect them. You can see this big arm here. It's a real slow, it turns around the basin really slow. We collect that sludge. We send some of that sludge back to the front of the aeration basin. That's called return activated sludge, or RAS. And then we take a portion of that sludge and we send it to the digester, which is waste activated sludge, or WAS. And so if we left the bugs to grow uncontrollably, that would cause us upsets in our system. And so we manage that, the biomass, we manage that closely to make sure we have the right bugs we're growing in the aeration basin, but also that we're not keeping them too long. The secondary clarifier rehab project, one basin was completed last summer, and the second basin is underway this summer. So we're putting in a new drive and mechanisms. We're grouting the floor, and we're recoding. We're putting in new drives and weirs. We're repairing any concrete issues we find when we have it taken offline, and we're recoding the existing mechanisms. And then the last project at the Kellogg Creek facility is an administration building improvement project. So if you haven't been in the Kellogg Creek admin building, it was constructed in 1973 with the plant construction, and it's really, I won't say it's starting to show its age. It's been showing its age. So this project will focus attention on the locker rooms, the lunch area space, office space. It's a real overhaul of the interior. But particularly, we want to make our organization a place that people want to come in and work for. And providing nice facilities is part and parcel to accomplishing that. So I'll just note that soon our lead operator at our facility here will no longer have to shower in a coat closet that was original. That's been converted into a locker room. And so I think it's just a good thing to do for our staff, both present and future. And so I should note that one of the other driver for this project is it is the first step in building dewatering and solids handling at the Kellogg Creek treatment facility. One last yes.
Jeff, can I just add to that footnote about the operator? I
Absolutely.
had a chance to visit with her yesterday at the West Picnic, And she had very interesting stories about life as one of our first female operators and what it was like to shower in that converted closet. So she's very grateful to have this new facility up and going soon. So just wanted to add that footnote. And we have a lot more women and female operators who we've joined with since then. So it's great news. Thanks for your hard work.
Absolutely. One thing I do want to note, this rendering shows a second story here. That was one of the options that was being considered during the conceptual part of process during this project. We are not moving forward with a second story. Other than that, the rendering is accurate, but without that second story. And that will take us away from the treatment facilities, and we'll now shift over out into the collection system. This is the Clackamas Area Interceptor Improvement Project. And so when we really look at the Clackamas Interceptor area, it's comprised of the gravity sewer that moves flow from, and there's a extension, the Rock Creek extension comes up here, and the I'm pointing on the wrong screen, I apologize. The Rock Creek Interceptor comes up through here, and then the Clackamas Interceptor conveys flows down to either the Clackamas pump station or over to the Intertie 2 pump station, or if we don't pump that flow, which those two stations pump flow over to the Tri-City facility, or we let it pass by and go to our Kellogg. So as you know, as I mentioned before, the Kellogg Creek treatment facility is limited, capacity is limited, and there's no more room for expansion there, but growth in that basin is the largest in the region. Happy Valley continues to grow, and those flows would via gravity go to the Kellogg Creek treatment facility. In order to convey the flows projected in the sanitary sewer master plan, the Clackamas Interceptor needs to be expanded. The Clackamas Interceptor is a gravity system, as I mentioned, so we're embarking on a design of the entire 5 miles, and then we will build the project in phases. I just want to make sure that everybody understands what an interceptor is, and I like to think of an interceptor as arteries, so they're the larger diameter pipes, and the collection system where in your neighborhood you have the smaller diameter pipes as the veins. They're all interconnected, but the interceptors are their larger pipes that convey those collection systems to the treatment facility or to an intertie pump station. We generally consider interceptors pipe sizes around 24 inches or larger. And then following that kind of artery and vein analogy, I like to think of an intertie pump station as the heart, which really, that's the ones that allow us to pump flows that would otherwise flow by gravity to Kellogg, to the Tri-City, to the Kellogg Creek treatment facility, to the Tri-City treatment facility, where we have the space to grow, and we will be able to accommodate that capacity. I want to note, you'll see that these are alternatives 1, 3, 5. This is a figure from our sanitary sewer master plan effort. Just to point out that when we do a sanitary sewer master plan, or really any master plan, we are always looking at alternatives as what other projects might be impacted, or what is the most cost effective, or if it's not the most cost effective, what is the best value to WES and to our ratepayers. And so it's never just one option that's initially considered. It's what options and creative thinking can we use. And so this is just one example where we had 5 different options that we were looking at for how we could make the improvements necessary in the Clackamas area and the interceptors and pump stations. And so just want to note that a lot of thinking goes into where we land with the projects that are delivered in our capital plan. The next project in the collection system is the Intertie 2, or the IT2 force main and pump station expansion. And just to be clear, a force main is a pipe that is downstream of a pump station, and it conveys sanitary sewer flows via under pressure. And so you use a pump to put it in a pipe and put it under pressure, as opposed to just relying on gravity. The IT2 project will increase the capacity at the pump station. It will enhance the controls for better operability, and it will complete the construction of the 30-inch force main. So you'll see here, there's segments 1 through 7. So the areas in between were constructed as part of the initial construction of the IT2 force main. There's a 20-inch force main, and we're building the second force main. It's a 30-inch force main. It was nice that the previous WES engineers, they did a really good job of planning and actually constructing the hard to construct segments. These were segments that either crossed underneath ODOT facilities or were drilled through rock. And so those were already built. So we need to just come in and replace and fill in the 7 missing segments to get that flow to our facility. And for a location, a geographic location, this facility is adjacent to Lowe's. And so this is up here near Lowe's. And so you can see it's a long way to pump flow from that area down to the Tri-City facility. The one big important part of this project is the optimized controls that are going to come along with this. Kellogg Creek is significantly downstream of this location. And so there is a reaction time for this pump station to impact flows, quite frankly, to either Tri-City or Kellogg. And so the control piece of this is being evaluated closely during this project to ensure that we account for those time delays and make sure that our operations staff has better flow management as we continue to need to pump more flow to Tri-City. One last note on this project, there is one more phase of this pump station that'll happen or is planned for roughly 2030. That will increase the size of it one more time by replacing some of the smaller pumps here with bigger pumps. And so it really is an integral part of our collection system strategy for sending flows to the Tri-City facility. Another project in our collection system is the Willamette Interceptor. And so the Willamette Interceptor serves the city of West Linn. It's down at the bottom of the hill near the old Blue Heron Lagoons. That's where our existing Willamette pump station is. This project will replace that pump station with a new pump station and a complete new force main from that pump station all the way across the bridge. We have the bridge crossing being constructed with the I-205 improvements. That's this section here. And so when we are all done, we'll have a complete new force main and pump station to convey the projected flows from West Linn all the way down to get into the Willamette Interceptor that runs to the Tri-City treatment facility. Construction is probable for the 26 calendar year, and we hope to be using the new force main at the end of 26 or by the midway point of 27, depending on availability of some of the electronic pieces are really going to drive that schedule from a procurement standpoint. The multi-pump stations improvement project, and this is, I would say, it's more a program than a project. It's not one single project, but we are touching or making improvements to 9 pump stations within our collection system. The interesting thing about the pump stations that WES owns and operates is, historically they're built over time, and we have a significant number of different pumps, pump types, pump brands, and also that's also a significant different number of variable frequency drives, styles and brands. And so we decided to deliver these 9 pump stations as one big project in an attempt to standardize our approach to the controls and instrumentation and pumps. We felt that this would be a better long-term solution for operations and maintenance, quite frankly. Having the same setup and system in place at all the stations is really going to help with, training new operations staff around how to operate. If everything looks the same, it makes it a lot easier to have that. The other nice part about that is having the same design engineer put together packages for all 9 stations. We're able to reuse portions of our specifications and and details. So we're not having to recreate that every time. We can rebundle that. So we determined that there's some cost-effective savings in delivering the project in this manner. The improvements are varied at each station, but generally consist of new electrical, new controls, and pump replacements, as well as addressing any wet well deficiencies we find when we put the station on bypass to make these improvements. We are completing construction on the first bid package this summer. We opened up the second bid package recently, and we'll be kicking that project off. And then the third bid package of pumps will be constructed next year. So we're finishing design on that and getting ready to go out for bid on that later this year.
Okay, Greg D.
Yes, hey Jeff, I was looking at the estimated construction timeframe. Is
Mhm.
that spring 24? Should that be winter of 25? Or is it written from?
Nope, we are. So these ones, sorry, I'm pointing to the wrong screens. The Gladstone, these ones we just went out to bid for. And so we'll be building in the fall here. We're going to be going to the board for approval on this bundle, and then we'll be going out to bid at the end of this year for these ones to build those through.
So you're going
So
out.
if part availability becomes an issue, that might drive our schedule out a little bit. Or if bypass pumping the station becomes we prefer to do that in the summer months. So there will be some flexibility around that, but I think we're on track on this project.
Right, but if you look at those three, if you don't start till spring of 24, winter 24 is already passed, right? So then it become winter of 25. See what I'm saying? It's not a huge deal, I'm just curious.
I see what you're saying. So how about April, early 24 through end of 24? Our intention would be, and I guess
You're
if we're
thinking
calling winter,
Got it.
January and spring, April instead of December. Yeah, I see what you're saying. That's fair. I could clean that up with months instead of seasons. The goal would be to start construction in the spring and finish it as we are getting into our heavy rain season. So before we hit past the first of the year and get into January, February in the real rainy season. That's a good question. That's good. I appreciate that clarity. I will address that in my markups here of these slides. Any other questions on that one? All right. I have based on my presentation, I have about 5 more minutes and I have about 6 more slides. So I'm going to go relatively quickly to make sure I get through them all. But again, feel free to interrupt. And if we don't make it to everything, I'm okay with that.
You're doing good with time, Jeff, because we got started a few minutes early. So
okay. All right. My trial run went long, so I've been
Yeah.
talking a little bit quicker this time. Sorry.
And you can have some of my time as well. It's okay. I have a very short report.
Okay. So the next project I want to talk about before I get into some of our smaller asset management renewal projects is the Fisher Forest Park project. And so this is a large on-site sanitary septic system that Wes owns and operates, which is a very unique thing. I'm not sure how that came about, but we own and operate it. And so it's part of our system that we need to maintain. The system was installed in the 70s. We're delivering this project in 2 phases. We replaced the collection system in 2022 and we finished that up in early 2023. And we are just kicking off replacement of the actual treatment system this summer. This is going to be a big save field operations and Wes a lot of overtime and time spent out dealing with the headaches of a system that had a significant amount of I&I and really nowhere for it to go. And so we've already seen a significant improvement in the I&I in our collection system by tightening it up and replacing it in 2022. We're significantly down, and now we're going to fix the treatment system to handle the flows as well and get that up to speed. And when we walk away, the system really should be something that operations staff hopefully, I don't want to say out of sight, out of mind, but it will be a lot less time spent on it and on call outs and other things of the equipment failing. It's coming up on 50 years old at this point, and it's really time to handle manage it. So I kind of ran down a bunch of bigger projects that we have in our system, but I also want to make sure that just to point out that in addition to these larger capital projects, we also focus on projects that try to optimize things within our facility or replace failing equipment, or as if it's not part of a bigger project, like the primary project, we're replacing everything, we might have pumps that are aging out and we just want to replace a pump specifically. And so we call these our R&R projects, or renewal and replacement projects, or they're identified typically in our condition assessment and our asset management, or just issues that operations and maintenance is having with how the plant's performing. So as the capital manager, from my perspective, my vision of our group is really to ensure that WES has the capacity necessary to serve our ratepayers. And the second client I consider is our O&M staff. It's really, we're there to support them to make sure that they treat and can meet permit. So in the course of our work, we find things that need to be fixed or replaced. As I mentioned, this is that data is collected and evaluated using our asset management systems and O&M feedback. And so we, in our budget every year, have $800,000 that we have, I'll say, earmarked for these types of project. And so here's just an example of two of the types of projects that we do with this money. And this pump here, it's when I mentioned the return activated sludge, or the RAS. So this is a pump that takes sludge that's settled in our secondary clarifier and returns that sludge to the front of the aeration basin. It's critical for operations. It's pretty consistent in its operation. It doesn't have to handle huge swings in flow. And so this is really just a direct replacement for the pump that was there to make sure that we have parts that are available and can be worked on. The original pump that we're replacing was from the mid 80s. And again, those are starting to run their course of useful life and part availability. And then here's this other project here. You see this ladder that's being built to get up on top of one of the structures at our Kellogg Creek facility. These are things that operations and maintenance staff address as either a safety concern or an issue that we might be able to optimize. And for this particular one, it was a safety where they wanted better access to the roof. On the roof is a lot of our HVAC equipment. We have to replace filters and other things like that. And so this just gives them a safer way to get up and down the roof. In addition to this ladder, this project also is building some access platforms where we have motors and other things that are high up on the wall. Rather than trying to have our staff work from ladders, we're building platforms that they can stand on and work in a more safe manner. So it's an exciting project from a O&M standpoint to provide them safe access to things and just overall make our facilities safer, which is important. And then here's another type of renewal project that I'll just point out. And so this pipe, as you can see here, the gray here is the pipe wall itself, and then you see all of this buildup inside this pipe, and that buildup is struvite, is what's called struvite, and struvite is really a crystal that forms on the inside of our pipes, and it's specifically typically downstream of our dewatering operation. And this struvite, this crystal that forms inside our pipes, it's made up of magnesium, ammonia, and phosphate, all of which is readily available in the what we call centrate, which is the water that's pulled out of the sludge when we dewater it. And so it is causing us issues. When we brought our new solids facility online, we started to pump our centrate over to the membrane bioreactor portion of our facility for treatment because it is nutrient rich, and that part of the facility treats those nutrients better than our conventionally activated sludge does. But what we found is we are getting much more deposition of struvite in our pipelines. And so this is an example of a project that was, that we're working on to provide our maintenance staff better access. Originally, you can see these are all flanged fittings now at the bends, and we tried to do 45-degree bends. So we cut out some of the piping that was in there and replaced it and made it easily accessible for our maintenance staff to get in and clean it. And so this is a buildup that was occurring monthly. Our guys were having to come in and clean these pipes out. And so in addition to the short-term fix of providing our maintenance staff better access to maintain this pipeline, we're evaluating other options for ways that we could prevent this buildup from occurring. So the types of projects that we get that don't fall out of a facility plan, but just through normal operation, we always look to make improvements and make our operators' lives easier and better.
William, yes.
Just curious how you clean that out. Is it like a router, or is it soft enough that you can just put a rotor
That's-
type thing through it?
Elbow grease and chipping. There is some chemicals you can use to dissolve it as well, but our guys really go to town with scrapers and tools getting in there to try to clean it out to get the full pipe flow back.
You just couldn't call roto rooter or somebody, huh?
Yeah, no, it's we need to remove it from the system. And so if we sent those solids down to our fine screens, it would potentially plug up those fine screens. So we try to take it out of the system as opposed to sending it on down through the pipeline. It's not, if left in place for a long time, it can get really adhered to the interior of the pipe. And so it's not, it doesn't have a lot of adhesion to the inner wall of the pipe, but it does build up relatively quickly.
Looks pretty
So it's
labor
not hard to
intensive.
remove. It is very labor intensive, which is, as I mentioned, why it's something we're working on studying right now, what other options we could have to maybe not only reduce struvite buildup, but eliminate it altogether. Is there some other way we can? And it's really driven by, we have all these three minerals heavily available, and then we agitate the water with our pump, and then it starts to precipitate out. Once it hits the wall, then it's a crystal that pulls those nutrients on and grows from there. And so
Of course,
it's
you shouldn't have to reinvent the wheel, though. I'm sure there's other places that are having a similar issue.
out at the Columbia Boulevard facility, BES is having similar issues as well. And so they are also working to study. There's lots of options for how to handle it. It's finding one that does it. There's different options that might have better benefits for dewatterability and other things. And so it's making the right investment to handle a situation that was
Well, I think you've got the right
unexpected.
idea of prevention being worth a pound of cure.
Agreed. Yes. Yep.
Thank you.
Yep. Absolutely. And so this was very heavy on sanitary projects, but I want to mention that, we have a significant and exciting stormwater project, and Greg mentioned some grant money that we got approved as well for this project, but it's the Three Creeks Natural Area Floodplain Enhancement Project. Just a plug, but we're all going to get an opportunity to tour this facility in our in-person advisory committee meeting in September. So I look forward to seeing you all there and joining that tour. But the Three Creeks Natural area is in the northern part of our service area, and we're in the process of designing a stream and potentially floodplain restoration project at this area. The goal of the project is to improve water quality, reduce downstream flooding, and improve stream habitat. Restoration of the Mount Scott Creek will include adding some stream bed material and logs to reconnect the creek to the floodplain. So I look forward to touring that facility in September, and we've got a significant grant to help build this project. And I'm on my second to last slide, but it's really the what's coming next. And as I mentioned, we had 6 years of planning, heavy work that we did as an organization. And so we have a really good roadmap for the projects we need to deliver, not only over the next 5 years, but quite frankly, the next 10 years. What I'm going to be doing as the new capital manager here, is my first time delivering the plan, is to make sure that I dive back into those planning documents and understand what those costs were, how we projected them, and make sure that the costs in our plan are as accurate as possible. As you can see here, I believe I've showed this slide before, but between 2020 and 2021, there was a significant increase in construction cost. And so this is the construction cost index looking back over the last 15 years, roughly 13 years. And so you can see it's pretty steadily up until 2020, and then we go up over 22%. In going into 2022, we still had a pretty big increase. We're seeing in 2023 things start to normalize. But one of my goals is we update this plan is to really dive into the costs and to make sure that the assumptions that we've made looking forward for the next 10 years are as accurate as we can based on looking back at this historical inflation impact we've had within the last few years. Now that it's normalizing out, I think is the right opportunity and the right time to do that. And I've reached out to other organizations and agencies to see how they've managed this. And it's a similar exercise being done in other organizations, is to really go back and revisit plans that were completed prior to this significant inflation and make sure that those numbers are as accurate as we can get based on the crazy inflation we saw between 20 and 21. So when we see these projects next time, my intention is to have not only a cost, but where did that cost come from and how did we modify the cost to account for this inflation. So as you see the plan draft this fall, that'll be part of those project detail sheets will be included. And Aaron and I will work closely together to shuffle as needed to account for this increase in cost to still deliver and meet the needs of our ratepayers.
And Jeff, why is Seattle there and not Portland? Are we exactly the same as Seattle? I thought our prices were slightly less.
We're slightly less. It's not a chart that's completed for Portland. So this is the engineering does these construction cost indexes. And so Seattle is the main market they look at here in the Northwest. And Seattle's a little bit higher than the national average, which are the gray bars. But what we see is regionally Portland and Seattle from a construction standpoint fall very much in line.
Okay.
And it's not, things might be even more expensive in Seattle, but the increases kind of match each other, if that makes sense. It's the percent increase that we're really looking at here around that. And that's my last slide. So any additional questions? I know that was a lot and I apologize for going fast, but I wanted to make sure to kind of convey that we're very busy. We have a lot of work. And I wanted to, again, thank you all for your time and energy in supporting us as an organization and making sure that we're doing the right thing.
All right, we do have some questions. Greg D.
Yeah, I don't have a question. I just have a couple observations I wanted to make. First, Jeff, that was a great presentation. And I say that, I give speeches all over the country and around the world, and you put a PowerPoint presentation together that showed pictures and not your speech. And so that the pictures were great for most all of us to see what's going on. Not everybody can do that, but this is what I keep trying to tell people, to do pictures and not their speech. The other thing that I observed is you treated your service area as a system, and you looked entirely as to the needs of the entire system. And if you looked at it that way, almost everybody had some need. And over the course of this, 6-year, 5-year CIP, you have addressed those needs. So, I mean, you've got Boring in there that's got some needs. You've got the whole central Clackamas area with the pipeline projects. You got some stuff in West Lynn. You got stuff, you got stuff everywhere. And you looked at it as a system, not as individual units. So I appreciated that, and a great presentation.
Thank you, Greg.
And Mayor Milch.
Just a similar comment. I appreciate the fact that you emphasized not only improvements to mechanical processes, but things that made the workers, your staff, more comfortable and safer, and that's commendable. Going back to slide 20, where you talked about the Willamette project there, and you mentioned it involved going over that bridge that's being worked on right now on the I-205. I understand there's a delay on the expansion or the widening of I-205 somewhere in that region. They were going from 2 lanes to 3 lanes, ultimately. And I wonder if that delay impacts the course of what you're doing on this project.
No, it will not. We're working heavily with ODOT, so it's they're building with that project, that 205 bridge project. They're actually they're going to be building our pipe across the bridge as part of their project. And so we timed, or our intention is to time our pump station project to match up with that. They're expected to be complete in 2025, and we're expected to come online a year later in 2026. So it might, if they have significant delays, could impact our ability to turn that new pump station and force main on. But we will always, until we demolish the old pump station, we'll always have that capacity there. And so I don't expect it to impact us significantly, if at all. We've built a kind of a year gap in there for ourselves to allow some delay on their part.
Very good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. It was a great presentation, Jeff. Thank you. And thank you for abbreviating it just a little bit, even though we were running ahead of schedule, which leaves us time for more questions. Does anyone else have any questions? Going back to a previous slide at all? No? Wow, you got off easy, Jeff.
Chair Helm, actually, maybe Greg, guys could jump in. There was something that Jeff didn't have the history to, and that was about Fisher Forest Park. How do we sometimes inherit these smaller community-based projects? How do they come about? Maybe Greg could field that.
Thank you, Shelley, and I cannot. Like I don't have the Wayback Machine, but yes, over the course of history, Wes has inherited Fisher Forest Park, Hoodlands, and Boring, and yeah, and we're doing work in those areas. And that's kind of really all I can say about that.
Sounds like we adopted them, right? They were up for adoption and we said yes, or?
Yeah, I think so. And honestly, when you think about, like, so we are investing in Fisher Forest Park right now, and it's about $1 million. And the next phase of investment to get them to kind of that, what Jeff calls that 20 to 30 year, like, we don't have to worry about it, is going to be another maybe $1 million. And if we charged them, they would be paying $300 a month, maybe, for wastewater services. But when you spread it across the, our rate zone, it's a couple pennies. So anyway, that's what I would say is, yes, we do have these pockets of need, and we are able to service them in a way that I don't think unduly burdens our current ratepayers.
Does it burden us during say an ice storm? Do they need extra resources that we take away from our plants, I should say? I don't know if that's ever been like, I know that it's all hands on deck 24/7 when we have an event like that, but I just didn't know if they would encounter the same problems we do.
That's a great question, and I would say that Hoodland definitely does. Hoodland,
yes. Fires,
yeah, up at, on the mountain, and they have dealt disproportionately with both fire and ice.
Yeah. So it's best to get them up to speed so that we can keep our resources closer to us then.
Yes.
Any other questions? Thank you, Shelley, for putting Craig on the spot for something he couldn't answer necessarily, but somebody has a history on that somewhere. But all right, Thank you, Jeff. Appreciate
Excellent.
you you doing this for us and getting us filled in. If anyone has any other questions after this, I know you can get a hold of Jeff directly and he's happy to answer your questions for you.
Absolutely.
Very good.
Thank you all for your time.
Thank you. And then we're going to go right on then to Shelley. You get your full time, Shelley, for the Clean Water Exchange.
Great. Well, I don't have a formal report on the Clean Water Exchange, but since we won't be looping back and reporting out what we learned and how we're going to use that information, I wanted to share a few highlights. I know that whenever I participate in a focus group or a survey, I always like to know. So just at least give me a snippets. What did you learn? What difference is it going to make? And how are you going to incorporate it into the work that you're doing? So thank you, Diana, for giving me a few minutes to be able to do that. But first, for those who may not be familiar with the Clean Water Exchange, we conducted it first in 2021, and then we did it again this year. And we're going to use this year's data as a baseline for our strategic plan, as a marker in Performance Clackamas, and to help us update the communication and engagement roadmap that we developed with all of your help. But if you're wondering, so what are the goals? Why did we do it? What are we hoping to learn? So the first part is really, we wanted to strengthen customer and stakeholder understanding of our vision and mission. We wanted people to have a better idea of who we are as an organization, what we do, and really why we matter. Brian will tell me often it's because we want more people to like us. Yes, that's always a nice thing too, Brian. Absolutely. But our district story, you can tell even by that one-off that we just talked about, is complex, right? It's been growing and adding and adapting, and now we are a regional entity. So it's really important that the people who are investing those dollars in us have that understanding. That's what we hope to do. But then there's the other part. We want to understand what you value, what you're thinking about. And then we have a section in there in the actual online survey where there's a formal evaluation. And that's really going to become key to the benchmark. So people get to say on satisfaction, like any other customer service survey, how are we doing? Where could we improve? And we learned a few things this time that are a little bit different than the time before. But then there's something new that aligns with our vision statement. And, I've talked to all of you at some point about this. We can't ensure a clean water future alone. It requires partnerships and collaboration. And Brian, you and I talked a lot about that on our walk, because besides holding focus groups and surveys, I did have one walking interview with Brian, who always teaches me so much and helps us understand where we can strengthen what we do. So thank you, Mr. Johnson, for that one. So we had 20, what I would call engaged stakeholders and partners, 26 partners participate in the focus groups. So to participate in the focus group or a walking interview, those folks have to have some to deep knowledge of who we are, right? Because we're really looking at helping to understand what's working, but what we need to be working on that we could be doing better. And then where can we achieve a clean water future together? And so that's really this idea that's starting to get traction and excitement on that collaborative piece. The survey, anybody who cares about the future of clean water, it was invited to participate. We promoted it heavily within our own service area for all the obvious reasons. But then there's another component that you have to self-identify as a customer. And so I'm pleased to say that we doubled our survey participants this year, 200. So we're up from 100 to 200. Yeah, it's not easy to get people to take a customer service survey. So we did something a little bit different this time. Thanks to Aaron Blue's team, we really heavily promoted it, besides all of the great channels that our PGA partners do, through our e-billing and our direct billing system. And we did it twice. And we also did it bravely when we sent out our rate increases. And guess what? The surveys went up. We got a nice boost when we sent it out at that same time. But what was amazing, even sending it out during the time when we are announcing our modest rate increases, the responses were still overall very favorable. But we also had some good feedback on what we could do to improve and where people were still confused, even the customers who are paying us bills directly, confused about our work. And that's the dot I really wanted to connect. And Jeff and I didn't plan this. This was really planned to be a prelude to the CIP planning you're going to be talking about in September and November. It just happened to coincide that really one of the biggest asks in that community survey is more education is needed on how the ratepayer dollars are used, especially related to planning and capital projects. And Mr. DiLoretto, you get this. You know what it's like out there. Trying to help people, first of all, care about infrastructure and understand, but let alone where their dollars are being put to use. So that's a great area of opportunity. Tonight was really a first sample, and it sounds like, Jeff, you got rave reviews, so maybe I need to take you on a roadshow. But we're going to be working on it from a communication perspective, from a management perspective, but mostly we want to work on it through our strategic plan. So those are some of the highlights we had. And also, I know, Christopher, you're out there. One of the things we talked about last year, and Kat, was the idea of making sure that our message and our communication materials were accessible to all. And the feedback we received in the survey and the focus groups really took it to a new level. I won't go into all of that today.